Hi, I'm Louis Paul. This is the Colors of Prog, where I discuss progressive music from all around the world in the past, present, future. Also progressive music related, bringing me to Chicago. And I named this show, titled this show, Chicago, the first two albums, Not What You Think. Now, rock bands featuring horn sections and jazz artists and bands known for their very various efficiency with the wind instruments have been around forever. You know, Charlie Parker, Coltrane, Miles Davis, to name just a few. They're well known. They're legends. And some of their music, especially Miles Davis, crossed over into other genres. Miles was very forward thinking, a crazy mad genius, but uh, what he did with his sound and opening it wide, it's just funny, it's spare and experimental, and it's still touched on so many areas and of music. And it's funny how so many people that went on to create their own bands and go solo worked with Miles Davis. John McLaughlin, uh, and so many others. Even Rolling Stones, current Rolling Stones bass player, uh, worked with Miles Davis. I mean, it's just like everybody worked with Miles Davis. He had such a big band and interchanging people. Anyway, that was a little off the track. In the rock realm, bands with horns, well, we're talking pre-Rolling Stones and Bobby Keys. Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Yes, they were among the first rock-affiliated bands, and they released "Child is Father to the Man," and a self-titled album, "Blood, Sweat, and Tears," both in 1968. Now, Blood, Sweat, and Tears evolved from the Blues Project, um, a similar band, but uh, also featured Al Cooper. Now, Al Cooper famously is known for his work with Dylan. He worked with Bob Dylan when Dylan went electric. Yes, that is him on Like a Rolling Stone. Um, anyway, so Al Cooper thought he could do even more with a brass section. So when he left the Blues Project, he added soulful, deep-voiced singer David Clayton Thomas to Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And the band had a unique sound, but an unstable lineup. Over the years, such well-known session men as Lou Marini and Tom Malone, later the Blues Brothers, Mike Stern, Jaco Pastorius, and later New York Dolls guitarist Steve Conti were all in the Blues Project. Crazy. Now, another rock band with horns was Electric Flag. Now, Electric Flag were also alumni of Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited sessions, namely Mike Bloomfield on guitar and Harvey Brooks on bass and Barry Goldberg on keyboards. So you got Al Cooper with the Blues Project, and then you got these three guys with Electric Flag. Very interesting. So they added Nick Gravenitis on vocals and guitar, and Hendrix alumni Buddy Miles on drums. So the band was augmented by a trumpet and two saxophone players, and they contributed a song to the Roger Corman movie, The Trip. That was in 1967. Their debut, A Long Time Coming, was released in 68. But by the time of 1968's second Electric Flag album, an American music band, Bloomfield, Brooks, and Miles had left. Talk about unstable lineups. Which brings me to Chicago. Not the band you think they may, yes, it's 2025 and a version of Chicago still playing with one or two original members who may have left and come back. Who knows? We know the story. But originally, they were very interesting, very different band. They formed in late 67. And the band played gigs as the Big Six. They moved to Los Angeles and were assigned to Columbia and released their first album titled the Chicago Transit Authority. And is the thing to continue with the band, kind of unheard of at the time. Chicago's debut was released as a 2-album affair, 2 vinyl discs of music. The first 2 sides were split over 6 songs, and the third and fourth sides, another 6. And some of these songs were long form, partially developed as suites. There's your first progressive rock connection, right there. They were really into composing suites. But the story gets interesting, more so. Assigned by CBS Columbia to produce the album, famed walking drug casualty and would-be motion picture guru James William Gurrico produced this album, as well as he did the second Blood, Sweat, and Tears record. But by all accounts, Gurrico was more of a Phil Spector presence, i.e., not there for a majority of the time. And this went on quite a while during Chicago's early years. But he was sort of always lurking. We'll get to that. The debut, Chicago Transit Authority, for those that might have forgotten, is a mighty blast of great music. It was rare at the time for several band members to share lead vocals. Terry Kath, guitarist, sang lead on 3 songs. Robert Lamb, who played keyboards, sang on the bulk of the songs. And Peter Cetera, who was bass player, sang on 3 songs, lead. But they also did a lot of backing vocals with each other's work. Very interesting sound. They were augmented by 2 trumpet players and a saxophonist and had quite the big sound, but not a big band sound. This was how do you say it? Almost like, let's see what happens. Just let's throw it against the wall, resulting in a sound that included Latin fusion, jazz, psychedelia, groove music, and a distinct willingness to be very political in their lyrics. Yes, Chicago was as left as you can get, and I support that. That's me speaking. Doesn't mean you have to stop watching this show. I think few recall how political early Chicago were. Now, musically, I'm going to take a step back here. I want to get you into the sound. I can't really play this until I'm on a different platform. Latin artists like Hector Lavoe and Joe Bataan, whose streetwise crossing of urban music and Afro-Cuban rhythms created a new sound, definitely are an influence on Chicago. The takeaways here, first album, introduction, all 7 minutes of it, letting the band's music speak for itself, followed by a breakout hit. First album, does anybody really know what time it is? Now, that is a very short song. That's really interesting how they pulled that as a single. Well, we got to remember in the days, singles were, let's be honest, two, three, barely 4 minutes long until singles got a little longer. Beginnings and all its 8 minutes of wonder is an often forgotten rock, jazz, Latin fusion workout. An amazing extended outro showcasing drummer Danny Serafine and most of the band on congas, bells, and tambourines. I mean, beginnings in this version on this album is uncut, and it's just, like I said, 8 minutes. They pulled a single version at 3 minutes, and it just cuts out the overwhelming zeitgeist of how great this freaking song is. I mean, really. Also has questions 67 and 68 on this record. Definitely they will get your attention. And of course, side 3, I'm a Man, is another Afro-Cuban inspired guitar percussion workout. Liberation, you see, we're talking about politics, is the closing 14-minute suite, and it's in several parts. It's a revolutionary call to arms politically. The Chicago debut is, I think, a forgotten gem. And the don't want to forget something. And the Mobile Sound Fidelity people released an original master recording version of this a few years back. It just sounds astounding. Just wanted to put that out there. Chicago, also known as Chicago too, but it's just called Chicago. They took out the Transit Authority. Was released in 1970. Like its predecessor, it's a totally amazing record with great lead vocals, more assured harmonies, all from Terry Kath, Robert Lamb, and Peter Cetera. Walter Parazader, saxophones and backing vocals on the previous album. Someone also mastered the flute, and that's a really nice change to the sound. This is another 2-record set. Again, virtually unheard of at the time for a new band. This sides 1 and 2 are made up of 5 songs. There's a brief single, Wake Up Sunshine, and there's a 14-minute suite in 8 parts called Ballad for a Girl in Buchanan. It's a beautifully orchestrated mini rock opera, one can say, of sorts. Part 1 consists of a lot of singles. It's very interesting that this, remember the Who rock opera, A Quick One While He's Away? It was made up of like lots of really catchy parts. Not Tommy, which a different rock opera thing, or Quadrophenia, but A Quick One While He's Away was all these really short songs that they knitted together. And this is Ballad for a Girl in Buchanan is filled with songs that they pulled for really short singles. I mean, who knew? So what's on here? Part 1 of the suite, consists of Make Me Smile, you know that song. So Much to Say, So Much to Give. 6 is Color My World, a huge hit covered by everyone. And the 8th part of the suite was Now More Than Ever. The last 2 sides of the double album, 3 and 4, contain a mix of short songs and another suite, It Better End Soon, in 4 movements. Well, what interesting stuff on here. The colorful, multi-ethnic musical soundscape that is fancy colors starts off side 3, followed by 25 or 6 to 4. Again, singles. Outrageous, astounding. The first 2 albums contain so many songs that have become AM and FM radio staples, but removed from what I perceive as a crafted series of music. And then, they never released the political songs or the anti-war statements. Today the band was thought of little more than a hit-making machine, but they were far from that, really. There's 2 live releases I'd like to cover in the future: the infamous Live at Carnegie Hall gig and a recently unearthed and remastered Live in Washington, D.C. that is epic in length. Well, apparently, Chicago's live shows, like their early studio recordings, were long, lengthy. Also, final note, 2 final notes. The Chicago album, the second album called Chicago, it was remastered and released by CBS Sony in 1987 and Rhino in 2002. But most recently, remastered and remixed by Steven Wilson. So that's very interesting. Highly recommend any version, get a hold of it. If you've got this in your stack of vinyl or CDs, you might want to pull it out. Now, let's go back to James William Grorico, who I mentioned earlier. He was a session musician and songwriter. He worked with Chad and Jeremy and did some session work for Zappa's Freakout album. He won a Grammy for the second Blood, Sweat, and Tears album, which was around the same time. He was producing the first 2 Chicago albums. But here's where things get really interesting. Most music industry people knew Grorico as a specter like a Svengali who often took songwriting credits for work he didn't contribute to. That's a thing with the record industry, isn't it? Especially in the early days. Now, he founded Caribou Records, most likely with Chicago ill-begotten royalties. This is noted in a documentary, and released records on the Caribou label by drug-soaked Beach Boys members Carl Wilson and Dennis Wilson. In 1977, Chicago sued him when they discovered that Grorico not only took allegedly 100% of their profits, but that he cooked the books, so he would get royalties from their songs. But, in the early days, Chicago were to blame because allegedly they were supplied with so much cocaine that the band was often blitzed on stage. There was a documentary recently released, Now More Than Ever, The History of Chicago. And it dealt with their 2016 induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but also mentions the band's cocaine problem, to the point where in the early 70s, the band erected on the stage a fake telephone booth for snorting cocaine, so where they think that the audience wouldn't know. They would go into a telephone booth, blow a line or 2, get back out there and sing and play. There's probably a photograph of this telephone booth. I'd like to see it. Now that I'm talking about it, researched it, and learned about it, I'm like, I'm sure these exist. Terry Kath committed accidental suicide via a gunshot. And so here we are, decades later. Chicago are hitting the revival circuit, singing popular songs from years past. One final note, Rorico always wanted to get into the movies. So he produced and directed a film, counterculture film, actually, starring some Robert Blake as the policeman, Lecture Glide in Blue in 1973, no doubt what Chicago prophets also alleged. So, there's a lot of history there with this band. So these first two albums are terrific, amazing. And Sweet's part alone, how they record this music, I think deserves more attention. Yeah, you might already have these, or you might want to find these versions. Yeah, Stephen Wilson, he's really adept at remixing and remastering music from a time ago. He's worked with a lot of different things lately. So that's our show for today. I hope you like it. Come back soon.